I should have known better than to bring them to the park on a Sunday afternoon, but the twins had been cooped up in our small apartment all week while I worked double shifts at the diner, and their brother had been asking about the ducks for days. 3-year-olds don't understand why Mama can't take them to feed the birds. They don't understand complex concepts like danger and hiding, and the fact that their mother has been running from the most powerful man in the state for almost 4 years. So here I was, sitting on a worn bench in Riverside Park with paint peeling off the slats, watching Sage, River, and Aspen chase pigeons with stale bread I'd saved from yesterday's shift. My beautiful disasters. My everything. My secrets wrapped in tiny bodies with stubborn chins and devastating smiles that could make my heart stop. The October sun felt warm on my face despite the autumn chill in the air, and for just a moment, one perfect, fragile moment, I let myself relax. Let myself pretend I was just another single mother enjoying a crisp full day with her children. Let myself forget that their father was the most dangerous man in the state. Let myself forget that he didn't know they existed. Let myself forget that seeing him again would destroy the carefully constructed life I'd built from nothing. That delusion lasted exactly 3 more seconds, because that's when I saw him. Rhett Blackwood walked into the park like he owned it, which, knowing him and his tendency to acquire anything he found interesting, he probably did. His same confident stride that had made my knees weak 4 years ago when I'd been his secretary and stupid enough to think he might actually choose me. Same broad shoulders that I used to trace with my fingertips in the darkness of his penthouse while he slept. Same dangerous grace that came from being a man who'd killed people with his own hands and slept soundly afterward because he believed every death had been justified. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my rent for 6 months, tailored to perfection, fitting him like a second skin. His dark hair was perfectly styled despite the autumn breeze that was wreaking havoc on mine, pulling strands loose from my messy bun. Even from 50 feet away, I could see the sharp line of his jaw that I used to kiss, the cold intelligence in his eyes that missed absolutely nothing, the power that radiated from him like heat from a flame. And on his arm, wrapped around him like she'd been specifically designed and bred to fit there, was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. She was tall, taller than me by at least 4 inches, with honey blonde hair that cascaded down her back in perfect waves that probably required a team of stylists to achieve. Her cream-coloured dress probably had a designer name I couldn't pronounce, something Italian or French that cost more than I made in 3 months. And the diamond on her left hand caught the sunlight like a captured star, so massive it should have looked gaudy but somehow just looked expensive. His fiancée. I'd read about her in the society pages I definitely didn't obsessively check every week at the library. Cassidy Sinclair. Heiress to the Sinclair shipping fortune. Perfect pedigree stretching back generations. Perfect face that graced magazine covers. Perfect life handed to her on a silver platter. Everything I wasn't and could never be. Everything I'd known I couldn't compete with when I'd made the decision to disappear. My first instinct was to run, grab the triplets and disappear before he saw us. Before those sharp eyes that catalogued everything landed on 3 dark-haired children who had his nose, his chin, his devastating smile. Before my entire carefully constructed life came crashing down around me like a house of cards in a hurricane. But I was frozen, paralyzed, rooted to the bench like I'd been turned to stone. Watching the only man I'd ever loved. The only man I would ever love. If I was being honest with myself, walk toward me with another woman while our children played 20 feet away, completely oblivious to the father they'd never met and the bomb that was about to detonate in all our lives. Marlowe. My name on his lips felt like a gunshot in the quiet afternoon. Deep, controlled, laced with something I couldn't identify because I was too busy trying to remember how to breathe, how to think, how to do anything other than stare at him like a deer caught in headlights. He'd stopped walking. The woman, Cassidy, looked at him in confusion, her perfect face creasing slightly in a way that probably gave her premature wrinkles she'd need expensive procedures to fix. But Rhett's eyes were locked on mine with an intensity that made my skin burn. Not on the children. Not yet. Just on me. And the intensity of that gaze made me feel like I was 23 again, standing in his office after hours pretending I was just there to drop off paperwork when we both knew I was there because I couldn't stay away from him no matter how hard I tried. Rhett. My voice came out steadier than I expected, which was a minor miracle. Years of waitressing had taught me how to smile through anything, how to act normal when your world was ending, how to pretend everything was fine when you were dying inside. What a surprise. Is it? Something flickered across his face. Pain, anger, something else I couldn't name. You disappeared 3.5 years ago. No note, no explanation, no goodbye. Just gone like you'd never existed, like we'd never... He cut himself off, jaw clenching. Cassidy's perfectly manicured hand with its blood-red nails tightened on his arm. Rhett, who is this? Her voice was cultured, educated, dripping with the kind of breeding that came from attending the right schools and knowing the right people. But he wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle that had haunted him for years. Like he was trying to understand how I'd managed to vanish so completely. Like he was trying to decide if he wanted to kiss me or kill me. And then, God help me, his gaze shifted. To the children. To Sage with her wild, dark curls that refused to be tamed and his grey eyes that saw everything. To River, who had his stubborn chin and my smile and his tendency to overthink everything. To Aspen, who was currently trying to climb a tree with the same fearless determination Rhett brought to everything he did, from hostile takeovers to eliminating rivals. I watched the exact moment he did the math, watched his eyes narrow as he calculated timelines and possibilities, watched his jaw clench as realization dawned, watched his entire body go still in a way that would have made smarter people run for their lives, because that stillness was the eye of the hurricane, the moment before Rhett Blackwood decided someone's fate. How old are they? His voice was dangerously quiet, the tone he used right before someone died. Rhett. I tried to deflect, to delay, to do anything but answer that question. How old? Not a question, a demand, an order. The voice of a man who commanded armies and expected absolute obedience. Or 3. The word felt like a confession, like admitting to a crime I'd committed. They turned 3 in July 14th, to be specific, at 2:47 a.m., 2:51 a.m., and 2:55 a.m. 4 minutes apart, each one of them fighting their way into the world like they were racing. The silence that followed was deafening. Cassidy looked between us, her expensive education apparently enough to help her do basic math. Confusion turned to understanding, turned to something that looked suspiciously like panic. She wasn't stupid. She could see what I could see, 3 children with Rhett's features, born exactly 9 months after I'd disappeared. The timeline was damning. All 3 of them. Rhett's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of a threat, a promise, a plea all rolled into one. You had triplets. My triplets. And you didn't tell me. You didn't even give me a chance to. He stopped, his control slipping for just a moment before he wrestled it back into place. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. Why? The question hung between us like a blade suspended by a thread, ready to drop and sever everything. Why did I disappear? Why did I hide his children from him? Why did I rob him of 3.5 years of their lives? Why did I make this choice that had cost us all so much? I could have told him the truth, that I'd overheard him talking to his second-in-command, a man named Colt Sterling, about the Sinclair alliance, about how marrying Cassidy would cement his power, unite two empires, make him untouchable, about how he couldn't afford distractions or weaknesses or complications. About how a secretary from the wrong side of town who was falling hopelessly in love with him didn't fit into those carefully laid plans. I could have told him that when I'd found out I was pregnant 2 weeks later, pregnant with 3 babies, which felt like the universe's idea of a cruel joke. I'd known there was no place for us in his carefully planned future. That bringing children into his world of violence and danger and blood would have been selfish and cruel. That they deserved better than a father who killed people and a mother who was too weak to walk away from him. I could have told him that leaving him was the hardest thing I'd ever done, that I'd cried for 6 months straight through the entire pregnancy until I had no tears left, that I still dreamed about him every night, woke up reaching for him, ached for him in ways that made me hate myself. But I didn't say any of that, because what good would it do? What would it change? Because you were dangerous, I said instead. Each word carefully chosen, carefully controlled, because your world would have destroyed them, because they deserved better than a father who kills people for a living and a mother who was stupid enough to fall in love with him, despite knowing exactly what he was. Rhett flinched like I'd slapped him. Actually, physically recoiled. Behind him, Cassidy had gone very pale, her hand dropping from his arm like she'd been burned. "Mama!" Sage came running over, her little face flushed with excitement and exertion. "Mama, I saw a duck, a real live duck with green on its head. Can we come back tomorrow? Can we bring more bread? Can we?" She stopped short when she saw Rhett, her grey eyes, so painfully, impossibly identical to his, going wide with curiosity. "Who's that?" My heart shattered into a million pieces watching my daughter look at her father for the first time without knowing who he was. "Just someone Mama used to know, baby." But Rhett had dropped to one knee with surprising grace for a man his size, bringing himself to Sage's eye level. His hand trembled, the only sign of emotion on his otherwise controlled face, as he reached out, then stopped, like he was afraid to touch her, like she might disappear if he tried. "What's your name?" His voice was rough, broken in a way I'd never heard it. Rhett Blackwood didn't break, didn't show weakness. But right now, looking at his daughter, he sounded absolutely shattered. Sage, fearless like her father. He stepped closer without hesitation. "I'm Sage. That's River, and that's Aspen." She pointed at her brothers, who had stopped playing and were watching us with the kind of intense curiosity only children possessed. "We're triplets. That means we were all in Mama's tummy at the same time. She says we were very crowded and kicked each other a lot." A sound escaped Rhett's throat. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a sob. Something in between that made my chest ache and my eyes burn with tears I refused to let fall. "I can see that," he said softly, his eyes scanning her face like he was memorizing every detail. "You look very much alike, all 3 of you." "That's 'cause we're triplets," Sage explained with the patience of a child talking to a particularly slow adult. "I just said that. Do you not listen good?" This time Rhett did laugh. And the sound was so unexpected, so genuine that Cassidy actually stepped back like she'd never heard him make that sound before. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe I was the only one who'd ever made him laugh like that. River and Aspen had wandered over now, drawn by the stranger kneeling in front of their sister like a supplicant before a throne. River, always the shy one, pressed against my leg and peered around at Rhett with cautious interest. But Aspen, my little daredevil who feared nothing, walked right up to Rhett and stared at him with unblinking intensity. "You're really tall," Aspen observed, with the brutal honesty only a 3-year-old could manage. "Are you a giant?" "Mama reads us stories about giants. They're usually mean, but sometimes they're nice." "No," Rhett said, his lips twitching. "Just tall for a person. That's not a giant." "Do you have kids?" Aspen asked, tilting his head in a gesture so reminiscent of Rhett that it hurt to watch. The question hit like a bullet to the chest. Rhett's eyes flicked to mine, and I saw something in them that made my breath catch. Pain, anger, longing, regret, love, loss. 1,000 emotions in a single glance. "I didn't think I did," he said quietly, his voice raw. "But it turns out I was wrong. It turns out I have 3 children I never knew about. 3 beautiful, perfect children." Aspen frowned, his little face scrunching up in confusion. "How do you not know if you have kids? That's silly." "You're right," Rhett agreed. "It is silly, and it's my fault. Because I didn't—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "Because I made mistakes, big ones, and now I have to fix them." River, pressed against my leg, whispered, "Mama." "Why are you crying?" I hadn't even realized I was. Tears streamed down my face unchecked, and I wiped at them with shaking hands that couldn't seem to stop trembling. "I'm fine, baby. Just the wind making my eyes water." But River knew I was lying. River always knew. He was too smart for his own good, too observant, too aware. He looked at Rhett, then at me, then back at Rhett, and I could practically see the wheels turning in his mind. Rhett stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving mine, his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for me. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The voice that made grown men beg for mercy. The voice that could command armies. The voice that had once whispered promises in the dark that I'd believed with my whole heart. "We need to talk. Now. Not here. Not in front of them. But we are talking today, Marlowe. You don't get to run again." "Rhett, perhaps this isn't the appropriate time," Cassidy started, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "Not now, Cassidy." He didn't even look at her. It wasn't cruel, but it was final. Dismissive. She pressed her lips together and stepped away, pulling out her phone with trembling fingers, probably calling her father or her lawyer or whoever rich people called when their perfect lives started to crack. I looked at my children, then at Rhett, then back at my children. "I have nothing to say to you that would make any difference." "Then you can listen." He leaned in close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same one that used to linger on my skin after nights spent in his bed, the same one I'd smelled on his shirts I'd stolen and slept in for months after leaving, because you've had 3.5 years to run and hide and make decisions about my children without me, 3.5 years to play God with our lives. That ends today, right now. I don't care what agreements we need to make or what compromises we need to reach, but you're not keeping them from me anymore. They're not your children. You gave up that right when you decided your empire was more important than— "Than what?" His voice was deadly quiet, the calm before the storm. "Than you. You never gave me a choice, Marlowe. You just vanished. Did you know I spent $1 million looking for you? Did you know I had investigators on 3 continents searching? Did you know I bought every single goddamn building in the neighborhood where you used to live, thinking maybe someone would remember seeing you? Do you have any idea what that did to me? Finding your apartment empty, thinking you might be dead?" I wanted to laugh, wanted to scream, wanted to ask him if he'd mourned me while planning his perfect society wedding to his perfect heiress with her perfect pedigree. But the children were watching, their little faces confused and worried, and I couldn't do this here. couldn't fall apart in front of them. "Not here," I said through gritted teeth. "Not in front of them. They don't need to see this." Rhett pulled out his phone, typed something with sharp, angry movements, and put it away. "My car will be here in 3 minutes. You're coming with me. We're going somewhere private where we can have this conversation properly." "Like hell I am. You can come willingly, or I can have my men collect you and the children and bring you to my estate. Your choice." His face was granite, immovable. "But make no mistake, Marlowe. You're not disappearing again. Not with my children, not ever. I will find you. I will always find you. And next time, I won't be asking nicely." The threat in his voice was real. Rhett Blackwood didn't make idle promises. If he said he'd have us collected, he would. And fighting him would only terrify the children and accomplish nothing except making everything worse. I'd forgotten what it was like to be powerless against him. To know that his will was absolute and my options were limited to obedience or worse. To remember that loving him didn't change the fact that he was dangerous and ruthless and used to getting exactly what he wanted. "Fine," I said, hating how defeated I sounded. "But they come with me. I'm not leaving them. Not for a second. I wouldn't dream of separating them from their mother." The word mother came out strange, like he was testing it, trying it on for size. "Unlike you, I actually care about what's best for them. Unlike you, I wouldn't rob them of their parent." The barb hit its mark sharp and painful. I deserved it. I knew I did. But it still hurt like a physical blow. A black SUV pulled up to the curb, one of many identical vehicles Rhett used for security because he was paranoid and careful and had more enemies than I could count. The driver got out, opened the door, and waited with military precision. Kids!" I called, trying to keep my voice steady and failing. "We're going for a car ride, a little adventure." "Ooh, a car ride!" Sage bounced with excitement, already running toward the vehicle. River looked uncertain, his hand tightening on my leg. "Where are we going, Mama?" "Somewhere to talk," I said, smoothing his hair. "It's okay, baby. I promise." But I wasn't sure I could keep that promise, wasn't sure anything would be okay ever again. Cassidy stood apart, her phone pressed to her ear, her face pale and shocked. She looked at Rhett once, and I saw something in her expression that made me realize she wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what this meant, what she was losing, the life she'd imagined crumbling before it had even begun. Rhett didn't even glance at her as he helped the children into the car. Were his large hands gentle as he buckled them into car seats that materialized from somewhere, like he'd been prepared for this possibility. Rhett's estate was exactly as I remembered it, and somehow even more intimidating now that I was seeing it through my children's eyes. Sprawling, excessive, designed to intimidate and impress in equal measure. The gates alone probably cost more than my entire apartment building, and the driveway was longer than my street. The children's eyes went wide as we drove up the circular driveway, past manicured gardens and marble fountains. "Mama," River whispered, pressing his face to the window. "Is this a castle? Do people really live here?" "Something like that, baby. One person, a very rich person." "Does a princess live here?" Sage asked, her voice full of wonder. I looked at Rhett, who was watching the children with an expression I couldn't read, something between awe and grief and desperate hunger. "More like a king," I said quietly. "A dangerous one." If he heard me, he didn't react. Or maybe he just agreed. We were ushered into a sitting room I'd never seen before, less intimidating than his office, but still dripping with wealth. The furniture probably cost more than most people made in a year. The children immediately found the expensive Persian rug fascinating and started playing some elaborate game that involved jumping from one geometric pattern to another, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Rhett dismissed the staff with a gesture and closed the heavy doors. Then he turned to face me, and I saw the mask crack, saw the fury and pain and confusion underneath the carefully maintained control. Talk, he said, leaning against the door like he was physically blocking my escape. Now, the truth. All of it. I want every detail. I want to know where you've been, what you've been doing, how you've been surviving. And I want to know why you thought hiding my children from me was the right choice. So I did. I told him everything. About overhearing his conversation with Colt that night, standing outside his office door with paperwork in my shaking hands. About the pregnancy test I'd taken a week later when my period didn't come. About the ultrasound that showed 3 heartbeats, and the way the technician had looked at me with pity when I'd started crying. About the fear that had consumed me when I'd realized I was bringing 3 lives into a world of violence. About the months spent running, hiding, our working jobs that paid under the table so he couldn't track me. About giving birth alone in a free clinic in a town whose name I'd already forgotten, surrounded by strangers, wishing he could be there even though I knew he couldn't be. About every sleepless night wondering if I'd made the right choice. About the terror every time I saw a black SUV. About the constant fear that he'd find us and take them away or put them in danger or make me choose between them and him. Rhett listened in silence, his face unreadable except for the white-knuckled grip he had on the back of a chair that was probably priceless and antique. When I finished, my voice hoarse and my eyes burning, he stood and walked to the window, his back to me, his shoulders rigid with tension. You should have told me. You were planning a wedding to another woman. I called it off. The words hit me like ice water, like a slap, like a revelation. What? He turned, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch and my heart stutter. 6 months after you disappeared, I called off the engagement, told Cassidy and her family that the alliance was off, that I couldn't marry her, that I couldn't marry anyone who wasn't you. Do you know what that cost me? What bridges I burned? What enemies I made? What opportunities I lost? But the society pages said, we got back together 6 months ago, after I'd given up hope of ever finding you, after I'd accepted that you were gone forever, after I'd convinced myself that maybe you were dead because it hurt less than thinking you'd just left me. His laugh was bitter, hollow. I thought moving on was the smart thing to do, thought building the empire you'd accused me of prioritizing would fill the hole you left. I was wrong. I was so fucking wrong. I couldn't process this, couldn't make it make sense, couldn't reconcile the man who'd discussed marrying for an alliance with the man standing before me now, raw and broken. Why would you call it off? The alliance was everything to you. Your legacy, your empire, your future. Meant nothing without you. He crossed the room in 3 strides, gripping my arms with a gentleness that contradicted the intensity in his eyes, the desperation in his touch. Do you have any idea how many resources I spent trying to find you? How many private investigators I hired? How many leads I chased? How many sleepless nights I spent wondering if you were dead or alive or just done with me? I bought every building on your street. I tracked down everyone you'd ever known. I offered rewards that could have made people rich for life. And I found nothing. You just vanished like you'd never existed. You chose her, I whispered, my voice breaking. I heard you. You said the alliance was everything. I said what I was supposed to say, what was expected of me, what I'd been raised my entire life to believe mattered. His grip tightened, not painful but desperate. But then you left. And none of it mattered anymore. The empire didn't matter, the alliances didn't matter, the legacy didn't matter. The only thing I wanted, the only thing I've wanted for 3.5 years, was you and our children. His voice broke on the last word. Our children that I didn't even know existed. Our children that I've missed 3.5 years of, First words and first steps and everything. I was trying to protect them by denying them a father, by raising them in poverty when I could have given them everything: safety, security, education, opportunity. I'm not raising them in poverty. My voice rose defensively. I work. I provide. They're loved and safe and happy and living in a one-bedroom apartment in the worst part of town while you work yourself to death at a diner for minimum wage and tips. His voice was hard, factual. Don't look surprised. I've known where you were for the last hour. My men are very efficient when properly motivated. And before you panic, I've already had security posted around your building, discreetly. You're safe. You've always been safe because I've had people watching for any sign of you in this city for years. The casual display of power should have terrified me, should have made me grab my children and run. Instead, I felt something else entirely, something I'd buried deep for years because acknowledging it meant admitting I'd made a mistake. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief that someone else was carrying the weight for once, that I didn't have to do this alone anymore. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice small and tired. What do you want from us? Rhett's hands slid up to frame my face, forcing me to look at him, to see the raw emotion he was letting me see. Everything. I want you and our children under my protection where I can keep you safe. I want to make up for 3.5 years I'll never get back. I want to watch them grow up, teach them, protect them, love them, be the father I should have been from the start. His thumb traced my cheekbone, achingly gentle. I want what I should have had all along if you just trusted me, if I'd given you reason to trust me. And Cassidy, your empire, your alliances, will be informed that the engagement is permanently off. Again, she'll survive. She'll find someone else. The Sinclairs will adjust. My rivals will take advantage. I don't care. I lost you once because I was too stupid to realize what mattered, because I was raised to value power over people. I won't make that mistake twice. Never again. Your empire can burn to the ground for all I care. I'll build another one if I have to. But I lost you once. I lost 3.5 years with my children. I'm not losing any more time. I'm not losing you again. Ever. Mama, Sage's small voice interrupted, cutting through the tension like a knife. Why is the man holding your face? Is he being mean to you? Rhett and I turned to find all 3 children watching us with intense curiosity. Aspen looked suspicious and protective. River looked worried and confused. Sage just looked fascinated by the drama unfolding before her. Rhett slowly released me and crouched down to their level, making himself small and non-threatening despite his size. Because I'm hoping your mama will let me do something I should have done a long time ago, something I wish I'd done years ago. What's that? Aspen asked, stepping forward like a tiny guardian, his little fists clenched. Be your father. If you'll let me, if your mama will give me a chance. The silence that followed was deafening. 3 sets of grey eyes stared at him in shock. Then Sage, my beautiful, fearless daughter, took a step forward, studying him like he was a puzzle to solve. You're our daddy? Our real daddy? The one we never met? Rhett's voice was hoarse, thick with emotion. If you'll have me, if your mama will let me. Yes, I'm your father. And I'm so, so sorry I haven't been here. That's my fault, my mistake, and I want to fix it if you'll give me a chance. River pressed closer to me, his small hand finding mine. We never had a daddy before, just Mama. I know. Rhett looked at me, and I saw every regret, every missed moment, every lost opportunity in his eyes. And I'm sorry for that. Sorrier than you could ever know. Sorrier than I can ever express. But if you give me a chance, just one chance, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to all of you, being the father you deserve, being there for every moment from now on." Aspen, who'd been silent and suspicious, suddenly asked, "Do you know how to play trucks? 'Cause I like trucks. A lot." The question was so unexpected, so perfectly childish, that Rhett actually laughed. A real laugh this time, not bitter or hollow. "I don't, but I can learn. I'm very good at learning new things." "Okay." Aspen considered this seriously. "You can be my daddy, but you have to get really good at trucks. Not just okay, really good." "Deal." Rhett held out his hand and Aspen shook it solemnly, sealing the pact. Sage looked at me, her grey eyes, so like his, searching my face. "Mama, is it okay? Can he be our daddy?" I looked at Rhett. At the man I'd loved and left. At the father my children had never known. At the future I'd convinced myself was impossible. At the choice I had to make right now that would determine the rest of all our lives. "I don't know," I admitted honestly, because I couldn't lie to them. "This is all happening so fast. Too fast." "Then we'll go slow." Rhett stood, and the vulnerability in his face nearly broke me. "Move into the guest house. It's separate from the main house, completely private. Let me get to know them properly. Let them get to know me. Let me prove that I can be what they need, what you need, what we all need. And when the novelty wears off, when you realize how hard 3-year-old triplets are, when your world of danger and violence threatens them, when keeping us safe means giving up your empire, then I'll burn that world to the ground to keep them safe. I've built one empire, Marlowe. I can build another. I can walk away from all of it, but I only get one chance with my children, with you. I won't waste it. I won't fail them the way I failed you." River, still pressed against my leg, whispered, "I think I might want a daddy, Mama. Is that okay?" And that, more than anything else, more than Rhett's promises or his pain or his declarations, made my decision. "Okay," I said, my voice shaking. "We'll try. But Rhett, if you hurt them, if you put them in danger, if you make them feel for 1 second like they're less important than your empire or your reputation or anything else, I won't. I swear on my life I won't. On everything I am and everything I have. I swear it." He reached for my hand, and this time I let him take it. Let his warmth seep into my skin. "Give me one chance. That's all I'm asking. One chance to be the father they deserve and the man you needed me to be 4 years ago. One chance to prove that I've learned, that I've changed, that they matter more than anything." Sage was already climbing onto his lap, chattering about the ducks in the park and asking if he had ducks here too. Aspen was pulling at his sleeve, demanding to know if he had any trucks in this big house. River still clung to me but watched his father with cautious, interested eyes. And I realized that whether I liked it or not, whether I was ready or not, whether I wanted it or not, everything had changed in the span of an hour. Rhett Blackwood knew about his children, and he wasn't letting them go, or wasn't letting me go. God help me, I didn't think I wanted him to. 3 months later, I stood in what Rhett insisted on calling our bedroom in the main house. We'd graduated from the guest house after 6 weeks when the children had demanded to be closer to their daddy, watching the man I'd once loved read bedtime stories to our children. They were obsessed with him. Completely, utterly obsessed. Sage had inherited his fearlessness and questioned everything, asking why, approximately 7,000 times a day, until Rhett's patient explanations satisfied her curiosity. River had his strategic mind, and loved when Rhett explained how things worked, from engines to buildings to the way businesses operated. Aspen had his stubbornness and refused to accept any answer that wasn't satisfactory, pushing and testing until he got the truth. And Rhett? Rhett had fallen into fatherhood like he'd been waiting for it his entire life. He'd restructured his entire organisation to be home for dinner every night, had hired the best security team money could buy to make sure the estate was safer than Fort Knox, had walked away from deals and alliances that would have made him richer if they required too much time away from the children, had literally told a business partner, "I don't care about the profit margins. I have a tea party with my daughter in an hour, and I'm not missing it." And then the dragon realised that maybe treasure wasn't the most important thing after all, Rhett read, his deep voice gentle and soothing. Maybe family was the real treasure all along. "That's mushy," Aspen declared, already half asleep despite his protests. "That's the truth," Rhett said, pressing a kiss to each of their foreheads with a tenderness that still amazed me. "The most important truth. Now sleep. We're going to the zoo tomorrow, and the tigers won't wait for sleepy children." That woke them up for another 10 minutes of excited chatter about tigers and elephants and whether penguins were better than polar bears before exhaustion finally won. Rhett tucked them in with practiced ease that still amazed me and followed me out of their enormous bedroom. In the hallway, he pulled me close, his arms wrapping around me like he'd done it 1,000 times. "They're incredible, perfect. I can't believe they're mine." "They are. Thank you." I looked up at him in confusion. For what? For keeping them safe when I couldn't. For being strong enough to leave. For being brave enough to come back. For giving them 3 years of love and stability even without me. His hand cupped my face, his touch achingly gentle. For giving me a second chance I didn't deserve. For trusting me with them. For letting me be their father. "Rhett, I love you. I should have said it 4 years ago. I should have chosen you over the Alliance and the Empire and everything else. I was a coward, and you and our children paid for it. I'll regret that for the rest of my life." His forehead rested against mine, his breath warm on my skin. "I'm not asking you to love me back. Not yet. Not until you're ready. But I need you to know that every day I wake up grateful that I got this chance. That I get to be their father. That I get to try to earn your trust again. That maybe someday you'll look at me and see something worth loving again." My heart ached with how much I wanted to believe him. How much I wanted to let my guard down and admit that I'd never stopped loving him. That seeing him with our children made me fall in love with him all over again. That watching him be gentle and patient and present made me want things I'd convinced myself were impossible. "Ask me in another 3 months," I whispered, "when the reality of this life really sets in. When you realize that your children are more important than your empire. When you prove that this isn't just guilt or obligation or some attempt to reclaim what you think is yours. I'll ask you every day for the rest of my life if that's what it takes." He kissed me softly, a promise and a plea. "And maybe one day, you'll believe that you and our children are my empire now, the only one that matters, the only one I'll fight for, the only one I'll kill for, the only one I'll die for." "Maybe," I conceded, letting myself lean into him. "But you have to earn it, Rhett Blackwood. Every single day you have to prove it. Then watch me." His smile was dangerous and promising, and full of the determination that had built kingdoms. "Because I don't lose what's mine. And you and our children, you're mine." "You always were. I was just too blind to see it, too stupid to claim it. But I see it now. And I'm not letting go. Not ever. I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm worth the risk." As he kissed me again, deeper this time, I realized that maybe, just maybe, we could actually make this work. Maybe the man who'd broken my heart could actually piece it back together. Maybe our children could have the father they deserved and the family I'd always dreamed of giving them. Maybe love was enough. Maybe second chances were real. Maybe walking into that park 3 months ago wasn't the disaster I'd thought it was. Maybe it was the beginning of everything I'd never let myself hope for. And as Rhett pulled me closer, whispering promises against my skin, I let myself believe, just a little, that maybe this dangerous, impossible, beautiful second chance was exactly what we all needed. Our story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, I wasn't running. This time, we were writing it together.